In the distant northern lands, covered in eternal snows, lived a skald whose spirit was as unyielding as the mountains surrounding her village. This enigmatic figure, celebrated for her mastery of words, bore a burden few would dare to shoulder, safeguarding ancient secrets and lore that shaped the destiny of a rival clan. These secrets were not mere lines on parchment, but an unseen treasure, passed down through generations and guarded with the same vigilance as a sacred blade. It was said that the voices of ancestors resonated within these stories, and anyone who dared to delve into their essence paid an exorbitant price. However, the skald's mission grew increasingly perilous as these secrets attracted covetous eyes. Many saw in them the key to dominion over warring lands, an advantage capable of transforming defeats into triumphs. Thus, the skald not only composed songs, but also moved like a shadow, armed with a code of cunning and valor. Her stories were full of riddles, safeguarding their secrets even from unsuspecting listeners. Her words became her armor, and her intuition her sword. But how could she preserve something so precious in such a treacherous world? For her, every step was a chess game, a diversion here, a clever ploy there, and eventually the curious would turn away, convinced there was no value hidden under her protection. But one day, a new threat emerged, something more persistent, more sophisticated, demanding strengths that even ancient lore could not foresee. And as the northern winds whispered of impending danger, she realized the true test was just beginning. An enthralling spectacle awaits, full of unexpected twists and dramatic events. Thora was born under a turbulent sky, where eagles circled above a gray abyss, as if blessing her first cry. In the Eagle clan, it was customary to observe omens at birth, and the flight of these majestic birds was interpreted as a harbinger of greatness. The daughter of a warrior and a weaver, Thora grew up amidst ancient tales and the rhythmic thud of weaving looms, a perfect blend of strength and grace that shaped the people of her village. From a young age, she displayed an insatiable curiosity, fascinated not only by the legends told around campfires, but also by the silence between words, as if it held even deeper secrets. Thora's gift as a skald began to manifest at an early age. While other children indulged in games, she sat at the feet of the elders, absorbing every detail of the narratives that formed the clan's soul. What was impressive was not only her memory, but also how she reinterpreted stories, as if breathing new life into them. By the age of 12, she was already known to all, and her voice, despite her youth, had the power to soothe hearts or ignite them before battle. Clan lore stated that the best skalds were chosen by eagles, and Thora, with her piercing gaze and upright posture, seemed to embody this proud spirit. However, her path was not strewn with roses. To earn the title of skald, Thora had to undergo trials that tested her loyalty and courage. At 16, she was sent to a distant mountain, where she was to spend the night alone, surrounded only by piercing winds and the vigilant gaze of eagles. It was said to be a test of spiritual connection, where the soul was meant to merge with the power of nature. Upon her return, Thora did not utter a word about what she had seen or heard, but her eyes shone as if they held the wisdom of the world. From that day on, her role as keeper of the clan's history was solidified. Yet like any destiny, her journey was only beginning to reveal its true essence. The Eagle clan, known among the northern peoples as the Children of Wind and Rock, had an origin shrouded in mystery and legend. The story of its founding was passed down exclusively by word of mouth, intended only for the skalds and clan leaders, lest it ever be inscribed on parchments that might fall into foreign hands. Lore states that long before the first settlements were built, a small group of outcasts found refuge in a valley surrounded by impregnable mountains. There, observing the eagles that dwelled on the highest peaks, the exiles believed they had received a sign from the gods. They too must rise above adversity, like those birds that defied the fiercest winds. The clan's identity was born not only from divine inspiration, but also from an unusual alliance. One night, marked by a crimson moon, as the elders prayed for protection, a gigantic eagle descended from the heavens and landed before them. Its gaze was so piercing that many swore they felt their souls being probed. The bird remained motionless for several hours, as if awaiting a sign from the people. One of the exiles, a woman named Brynhild, timidly approached and offered a piece of meat. The eagle accepted it, but did not fly away. That night, Brynhild dreamed of a winged figure who revealed an ancient secret to her. Eagles were keepers of the winds and knew the paths between worlds. They could deliver messages to the gods and bring answers to those who were worthy. Brynhild's dream was not ignored. The exiles, now united under her leadership, decided to honor the eagles as their spiritual guides and protectors. They created rituals, including offerings in the mountains, and established a symbolic connection with the birds based on gestures and sounds. The most gifted were taught to interpret the eagle's behavior, believing that every flight, every cry, carried encoded messages from the gods. This knowledge was passed down only to a select few within the clan, known as the Eyes of the Winds. However, the true secret that defined the destiny of the Eagle clan lay in something far deeper. Lore states that the warrior maiden Brynhild received a golden feather as a gift from a colossal eagle, impervious to flame and untouched by time. This feather was believed to be a key to an ancient power, establishing a connection between the world of the living and the realm of the departed. It was said that by performing a special ritual during a storm, a skald could use this feather to open a direct channel to the spirits of ancestors and receive answers to the clan's most profound questions. However, this rite was fraught with risk and could not pass without consequence. The feather drained a portion of the life energy from the skald performing the ritual, and there was a danger of attracting unwelcome entities dwelling in the grim corners between worlds. For centuries, the clan carefully guarded the feather as its greatest treasure. It rested in a stone vault, protected by runes and the tireless vigilance of the most devoted warriors. Only the High Skald and the clan leader were permitted to see or touch the feather, and then only in moments of extreme necessity. The lore surrounding the sacred artifact became an integral part of the clan's self-identity, reinforcing the belief that they were not merely a tribe of warriors and farmers, but keepers of a living connection with the gods and their ancestors. Despite all precautions, there were times when secrecy was threatened. Enemies of the clan repeatedly invaded the valley in search of the power promised by the legend of the Golden Feather. Rumors spread that whoever possessed the feather could control the winds and shape destinies. These attempts were always thwarted with ferocity and ingenuity. The clan skillfully used the terrain and guerrilla tactics to confuse invaders, luring them into deadly traps. Once, a group of enemies managed to capture one of the Eyes of the Winds and attempted to extract the feather's location. However, clan members were trained to withstand any torture, and the secret remained undisclosed. Over time, the fame of the Eagle clan spread far beyond the mountains. Other peoples saw them as mystical, almost supernatural beings. Allies sought their blessing before embarking on long journeys or battles. The eagle became more than just a symbol. It was a shared identity, binding every clan member with unbreakable ties. However, the burden of preserving this legacy was not light, and the skalds especially felt its weight in every word, in every secret kept. Thora, one of the clan's most talented skalds, felt this pressure more than anyone. She understood that, as the keeper of an ancient secret, her mission extended beyond merely retelling stories. She had to protect the very soul of the Eagle clan. But in times of change and impending danger, Thora knew that ancient secrets have a way of revealing themselves, especially when least expected. In the icy wastes of the north, where winter reigned longer than any king, a clan of nomadic warriors carved their legend in steel and blood. They called themselves the Vajimi, the Mountain Wolves, a name that instilled awe and respect in all who crossed their path. These warriors were like the winter wind, unpredictable and merciless. They built no settlements and claimed no permanent lands. Their home was the battlefield, and their wealth, war trophies and plunder. But behind their fame as raiders lay a deeper purpose, an obsession that drove them like a primal instinct: the eagle feather. The legend of the eagle feather was known to the elders of the Vajimi clan. They believed that somewhere in the lands of the eagle clan, a sacred artifact was kept. A single feather, shining like gold in the sun and cold as silver in the snow. It was said that this feather was not merely a symbol, but a portal of power, granting its possessor a vision transcending time. With its help, one could foresee the fall of kingdoms, sense betrayals, and draw strength from darkness. For nomadic warriors living in the constant uncertainty of battles and wanderings, possessing such power promised not only victory, but also control over their destiny. The Vajimi began to prowl the lands of the Eagle clan, like predators stalking their prey. They used the silence of the forests and the cover of moonless nights to observe their movements. Every song, every ritual, every story told around campfires was meticulously analyzed. They sought not merely to plunder, they wanted to penetrate the very essence of the Eagle clan, shatter their trust, and wrest from them what they believed was rightfully theirs. However, the feather was hidden from prying eyes and securely protected. The Eagle clan's secrets were as profound as the myths themselves, guarded not only by Thora and her incantations, but also by a power lying beyond the world of the living. Nevertheless, for the Vajimi, this was not an obstacle. It was a challenge they were ready to embrace with all the fury of their souls. One frosty morning, under a pale winter sky, one of the Eagle clan warriors went hunting alone. It was Gunnar, a fearless but impulsive youth whose bravery often bordered on recklessness. His bow hung over his shoulder, and his sword swayed at his hip as he confidently walked through the forest surrounding the clan's land. The snow underfoot muffled his steps, but the silence was deceptive. Gunnar was unaware that he was being followed. In the shadows of the trees, predatory eyes watched him. The mountain wolves were stalking their prey. The ambush was swift and merciless. Gunnar barely registered the danger before he was surrounded by Vajimi warriors, whose actions were terrifyingly synchronized, like a pack of predators tracking prey. The skirmish was brief, and though Gunnar fought bravely, the Vajimi's numerical superiority and bestial fury left him no chance. He was captured but not killed, as the leaders of the Wolf clan understood that a living prisoner from the Eagle clan held far greater value. Gunnar was taken to a hidden mountain refuge, where the piercing cold felt like a blade's thrust, and subjected to brutal physical and psychological torment aimed at breaking his will and extracting the clan's secrets. Days stretched into an unending procession of torture, but Gunnar stubbornly resisted. Then one of the Vajimi, cunning and devious as a lone wolf, changed tactics. Abandoning brute force, he began to cajole the prisoner with flattery, promising him freedom, immense riches, power, and even the chance to become part of the Vajimi clan, which many would consider an enviable fate. Under the influence of pain, solitude, and flattery, the young warrior's defenses gradually crumbled. In a moment of weakness, intoxicated by promises and exhausted by torture, Gunnar revealed what he knew about the legendary feather and indicated its possible locations. When the last words escaped his lips, a sinister smile lit up the faces of his captors. They had achieved their goal. Night descended upon the valley like a heavy cloak, concealing Gunnar's treacherous steps as he returned to the Eagle clan. His appearance was met with jubilation, though also with some hidden apprehension. The young warrior claimed he had escaped the Vajimi's captivity through his cunning, and his tale of bravery instilled pride in his kin. However, his return carried something ominous, an unease lurking deep within his eyes. Gunnar now faced a clear task set by the mountain wolves: acquire the feather, the Eagle clan's most sacred relic, and deliver it to the Vajimi. He waited patiently, observing and biding his time for the opportune moment. By day, Gunnar diligently performed his clan duties, yet constantly monitored the reactions of his brothers-in-arms. He needed to appear convincing, flawless. And when night reached its peak, Gunnar took a desperate step. With the lightness of a mountain breeze, he slipped into the main hall where the feather was kept under the vigilant gaze of seasoned guards. His confidence and knowledge of the terrain became his main allies. Skillfully avoiding patrols, he reached the intricately adorned pedestal where the relic rested, surrounded by symbols of protection and ancient reverence. With trembling but resolute hands, Gunnar wrapped the feather in dark cloth to conceal its silvery glow, which seemed to pulse with a life of its own. He knew he could not delay. Silently leaving the hall, he vanished along paths known only to clan members. Adrenaline surged through his veins, and every sound in the forest intensified with the realization of the gravity of his betrayal. Finally, disappearing into the boundless mountains, Gunnar carried away more than just a sacred relic. He carried away the destiny of the Eagle clan. But in the night's darkness, the true consequences of his act began to emerge, silent and ominous, like an approaching storm. Gunnar reached the Vajimi camp with a heart torn between triumph and doubt. The forest's darkness seemed to thicken around the place, and the flickering campfires cast disturbing shadows on the warriors' weary faces. He handed the feather to the wolf chief, a man with an authoritative voice and a smile reminiscent of a predator stalking its prey. For a moment, Gunnar thought he had earned the Vajimi's respect, but reality proved harsh and ruthless. With a sudden gesture, the chief ordered his execution, and in the next instant, Gunnar was surrounded and mercilessly killed. The young traitor perished, never realizing the full extent of his mistake. The Vajimi, now in possession of the feather, celebrated their victory with loud laughter and triumphant speeches. The chief raised the relic with hands trembling from greed, preparing to begin the ritual that, according to legend, was supposed to grant them invincibility. However, as soon as his fingers touched the feather, a piercing shriek of pain echoed through the camp. The feather reacted as if alive, erupting in bright flames and emitting an unbearable heat. The chief fell to his knees, clutching his chest as if a scorching light consumed him from within. Other warriors, consumed by greed, attempted to intervene, but the same fate befell them. One by one they fell, burning from within, as if their souls were torn from their bodies by the relic itself. When silence finally settled over the camp, only ashes remained and the sound of wind rustling through the trees. The feather, lying on the scorched earth, seemed even more majestic than before, surrounded by an aura pulsating with ominous energy. There was something more to this story, something even ancient skalds would not dare to explain. In the boundless expanse of the night, the relic waited, untouched and relentless, leaving a trail of mystery and death for anyone who dared to challenge its power. Thora, waking from a restless sleep, felt a strange premonition. It seemed to her that the whispers of the eagles, of whom she often composed songs, were now speaking directly to her. An ancient call enveloped her, guiding her steps through the forest, as if she were connected to something unfathomable. Without warning any of her kin, she followed her intuition, moving with the confidence of an experienced tracker. The trees seemed to part before her, and the leaves whispered ancient secrets as she advanced. Upon arriving at the Vajimi camp, Thora felt a powerful surge of energy emanating from the mysterious feather, as if her senses were heightened by supernatural forces. Despite the crude fortifications of wood and stone, she saw a scene of destruction. Gunnar, the traitor, lay lifeless on the ground, his face contorted in a grimace of terror, a testament to his treachery. Around him lay the bodies of 5 Vajimi warriors, covered in gruesome burns, as if the artifact had punished them for their audacity. To Thora's surprise, the rest of the clan was absent. The camp seemed deserted, save for the dead and the ominous feather lying in the center of the chaos. Even from a distance, she felt the artifact's power, a weight pressing on her soul. The silence, almost deafening, was filled with mystery, only emphasizing her resolve. Something greater was at stake, demanding her understanding and intervention. The feather, shining as if forged from fire and gold, awaited its new owner, calling Thora to fulfill her destiny. With the caution of an experienced hunter, yet with a sense of urgency, Thora advanced through the devastated camp. The feather shone brightly in the center of the ruins, like an unquenchable flame. The silence around her was oppressive, almost suffocating, yet her resolve guided her forward. She believed the danger had passed, that death had claimed all who dared to challenge the artifact's power. But Thora did not know that the true threat lurked in the shadows. The surviving Vajimi warriors lay hidden, like hungry predators, awaiting the opportune moment to strike. They heard her cautious steps and sensed her presence even before she entered the camp. Hidden in nearby caves and behind strategically placed boulders, they watched Thora approach the feather. When she finally reached out to take it, the warriors sprang forth like lightning, swift and merciless. One of them knocked her down with a powerful blow, while others swarmed her, binding her hands and feet with rough ropes. Despite her desperate struggle, the numerical superiority was overwhelming. The warriors resolutely led her to the summit of a high mountain. The path was arduous, and the icy wind blowing from above seemed to mock their plight. Reaching a secluded spot, sheltered by steep cliffs, they declared their intentions. They placed the feather before her, like a trophy, and commanded her to use it. Their plan was clear, to force Thora to reveal her clan's secrets, perhaps even to unleash the feather's power for their own selfish ends. Bound and surrounded by enemies, Thora felt the tension in the air mounting, realizing that this moment could decide her fate and that of her clan. Thora knelt, her body battered and bruised, pain piercing every cell of her being. The Vajimi warriors surrounded her, their gazes merciless, and their chief, a tall and imposing man, gripped his blade tightly, awaiting the opportune moment to strike. "You have a chance to save your life, Scold," one of the warriors said with contempt in his voice. "Speak now, or the price will be high." She proudly raised her head, despite the burning pain. Whatever they did, she would not reveal the secret. The ancient power she guarded was not merely a relic, it was a key to something that could destroy or save her clan. "I will not speak," Thora replied with difficulty, but the firmness in her voice was unwavering. "The secret I keep does not belong to me alone. It is for the gods, and you will never understand its true value." The warriors erupted in merciless laughter, but Thora felt their patience wearing thin. The threat loomed. Her hands ached from the bonds, and blood seeped from beneath the ropes, but her courage continued to burn within her. "You have no choice, Skald," another warrior said, pressing a blade against her skin, warning that time was running out. "We will break you until you speak." The realization that her resistance was broken was almost more painful than the physical agony. Thora understood that if she yielded, the consequences would be catastrophic, but her spirit refused to surrender. Gathering her last strength, Thora closed her eyes and, with a barely audible whisper, appealed, "Ancient gods, hear me, help me, or all will be lost." And as soon as the words left her lips, a wave of piercing cold swept into the space. The wind howled, as if the very atmosphere had shifted. Something was approaching, something unfathomable to the warriors surrounding her. Tension mounted, as if destiny itself was preparing for change. With a final breath, Thora lost consciousness, her body falling heavily to the ground. In her agony, Thora was on the brink of an abyss. The pain was unbearable, and darkness enveloped her mind. Her breathing grew heavy, and the sounds around her distorted until they vanished completely. She no longer felt her bound hands, nor the weight of steel on her skin, only absolute emptiness, as if the world around her was dissolving. At the moment, Thora's consciousness was about to fade. Something extraordinary occurred, high in the mountains, where gusts of wind tore at the rocks and the heavens stretched to infinity. A figure of grandeur and power emerged against the leaden clouds, making the very air vibrate. Thora could not tell if it was a dying hallucination or the manifestation of divine power, but the vision was as tangible as the icy wind caressing her face. From nowhere, a gigantic eagle appeared, as if woven from the storm itself. Its plumage gleamed like gold in the rising sun, yet simultaneously radiated an unearthly glow as if woven from pure energy. Its powerful wings cleaved the air with such force that everything around trembled. Each movement resonated with a wave of energy sweeping across the mountains, like a silent roar echoing through rocks and trees, as if nature itself responded to its call. The eagle's eyes, deep as mountain lakes, pierced the soul of anyone who dared to look into them. Its talons were sharper than any blade, and its beak, carved as if from ivory, seemed capable of tearing the very fabric of creation. The oppressive silence was shattered by a blood-curdling sound, the beating of the eagle's wings. A deafening roar seemed to come from afar, yet was unbearably close, as if the sky itself was tearing open with each wing beat. A furious wind swept over everything, crushing rocks, hurling warriors into the abyss, their armor shattering, and their screams of terror drowned out by the roar of the storm unleashed by the eagle. Thora could not discern what was happening, but she felt the overwhelming force of the wind, the destruction wrought by the eagle. The sound of the air being torn apart was like rolling thunder. In a flash, all enemies were vanquished, their lives ended by divine power. The earth trembled, trees bent under the force of the wind, and the Vajimi clan, who had threatened Thora's life, was wiped from the face of the earth before they could even engage in battle. A storm of light and fury consumed everything. With a final beat of its wings, the eagle made a movement as if cleaving the very air. The wind borne from it gently enveloped the unconscious Thora. Her body was lifted by a current of warm air, coaxing her back to life. The pain receded and consciousness returned. She sharply opened her eyes, her body still trembling but now filled with a new, invigorating energy. The eagle, hovering above her, looked down with its deep, wise eyes. Its presence was all-encompassing, almost divine, as if time and space themselves bowed before it. Thora, overwhelmed, felt a wave of serenity and strength permeating her soul, as if she had been blessed by something incomprehensible to the human mind. Thora, daughter of the eagle. The eagle's voice echoed in Thora's mind, clear and deep, yet soft as the mountain wind. The Eagle clan is in danger. The secret you guard has been exposed, and dark forces seeking to use you are near. At stake is not only the survival of your people, but the fate of all you hold dear. Thora, stunned by what she heard, looked at the eagle, unsure what to say. But it continued, its voice like an ancient echo, the whisper of the mountains themselves. You must flee to the west. Take this feather, for it will be the key to your people's salvation. I will be with you, guiding you, even when darkness gathers. You are not alone, Thora. The eagle spread one of its enormous wings and, with a gentle motion, dropped a golden feather that floated gracefully into Thora's hands. The moment the feather touched her skin, a wave of power surged through her entire body, as if the very essence of the air flowed into her. As majestically as it had appeared, the eagle cast a final glance at Thora, a look that conveyed more than words could express. Then it flapped its wings and vanished into the clouds, as if it had never been there. Thora stood frozen, immersed in silence. The wind had died down, but the feather in her hand pulsed with an energy she did not yet understand. But one thing was clear: the path ahead would be fraught with dangers, yet also with a power she could now summon. With a heavy heart, yet with firm resolve, Thora prepared to journey west, where truth and destiny awaited her. The eagle had warned her. Time was short, and the future of the Eagle clan depended on her choice. Holding the golden feather, Thora felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. The vision of the eagle was fresh in her memory, its clear and powerful message echoing in her thoughts. The mountain wind and the power of the mystical creature filled her with renewed courage. She knew what she had to do, knew she could not afford to make a mistake. With a heavy heart, she began her journey back to the Eagle clan. The road was long and arduous, but Thora felt that time was running out. The future of her people was at stake, and she could no longer delay. The sound of the wind, the rustle of leaves, everything now seemed part of a call that could not be ignored. Upon her arrival back at the Eagle clan, the familiar warmth of the hearth was overshadowed by an atmosphere of tension. Clan members gathered, their gazes, full of curiosity and suspicion, fixed on the approaching Thora, whose face expressed seriousness and resolve. She anticipated the chief's questions and understood their doubts, for the news she carried required time to be fully grasped. Thora was led into the spacious assembly hall where the clan chiefs made important decisions. Silence fell over the hall, and all eyes turned to her. Elder Halvar, the chief of chiefs, broke the silence. "Thora, Skald of the Eagle, you once again set foot on our clan's land, but this time your words carry immense weight. Tell us, what urgent matter compelled you to disturb the peace of our lives?" His voice was deep and respectful, yet a shadow of distrust lingered within it. Thora, gathering her courage, raised the golden feather, a symbol of connection to the gods, and began her account of the events that transpired on the mountaintop. She recounted the appearance of the majestic eagle, the annihilation of the Vajimi clan, the message from the gods, and the impending threat. She emphasized the urgency of the mission and the necessity of relocating the clan to the west, where safety awaited them. Silence reigned in the hall, broken only by the sound of breathing. The chiefs of the Eagle clan fell into a long discussion, evaluating Thora's words. Some expressed skepticism, while others were moved by the gravity of the situation. Halvar, with silver hair and an imposing demeanor, remained silent, gazing piercingly at Thora. "If what you say is true, and I have no reason to disbelieve you, then we face a trial that cannot be ignored," Halvar finally pronounced, his voice full of resolve. "We, the people of the Eagle, have always followed the wind and the stars, but what you propose is a radical change. To journey west, we must leave behind all that is dear to us, our fields, our homes, our roots." Thora did not avert her gaze. She knew this response was inevitable. The gods demanded a sacrifice, and the fate of the clan depended on her decision. "I understand, Halvar," Thora replied, her voice confident. "But the Eagle clan cannot hide forever. The secret we guard concerns not only us, it belongs to all, and the gods demand that we act. The West is our only hope for survival and a chance to honor our ancestors." Tension in the hall reached its peak as the chiefs deliberated the proposal. The younger clan members were ready to follow Thora, believing in the power of the divine message. The elders, more conservative, hesitated, fearing that change would disrupt the clan's stability. After a long wait, Halvar slowly rose. He cast his gaze over the chiefs, then fixed it on Thora. "I know you would not make such a decision without extreme necessity. If the gods are on your side, then we are ready to follow you. We, the people of the Eagle, have always relied on our strength and wisdom, and now, more than ever, we must unite on this new path." we go west. The decision was made. The Eagle clan, with heavy hearts, began to prepare for the long journey. Families gathered their belongings. Clan members formed groups, ready to follow Thora. An atmosphere of determination filled the air. Warriors and elders looked to the future with hope. Thora, now the leader of this exodus, felt the weight of responsibility, but knew she was making the right choice. The West represented a new hope, a new beginning for her people. She felt the wind, as if the gods whispered words of support. It was time to set forth. The Eagle clan's journey west was long and arduous, full of unexpected trials, hostile landscapes, and piercing winds of uncertainty. The clan, still reeling from the loss of their homeland, set out with hope, but the following months became a true test. In the first days, the clan moved relatively quickly. Children, women, and elders rode in oak wagons, while warriors marched ahead, guarding and protecting them. The trails were difficult, and the mountains loomed like insurmountable giants. The feeling of being in unfamiliar territory was palpable. But Thora, with the golden feather, felt guided by forces beyond human comprehension. She believed the gods were guiding her, but the weight of responsibility pressed upon her shoulders. The weather did not favor the travelers. Storms intensified, bringing strong winds and incessant rains, making the journey even more difficult. Rivers that would otherwise have been minor obstacles overflowed, making crossings perilous and slow. Many younger clan members began to doubt Thora's leadership, deeming her resolve obsessive and fanatical, while the elders, who trusted the ancestral lore, saw her journey as reckless. During a period of harsh trials, when the heavens unleashed incessant rain and winds raged with fierce power, a rift grew within the clan. A group of people, led by the battle-hardened warrior Eric, whose distrust of Thora's leadership had long taken root, separated from the main body. They turned their steps south, believing that well-worn paths promised fewer dangers. Eric and his followers declared that the Eagle clan was doomed in the western lands, that the gods had turned away from them. Thora, despite the deep wound inflicted by the betrayal, maintained unwavering resolve. She believed that if the gods favored her, the path she had chosen, even if some chose to diverge from it, would lead to salvation. After several weeks of grueling march, as the clan's morale steadily declined under the burden of hardship, a mountain range stretching to the horizon appeared before them. The paths proved treacherously dangerous, and the mountains were shrouded in dense, gloomy forests. Scarce game supplies only exacerbated the situation, giving rise to fears of starvation. The Eagle people, accustomed to the vastness of their former lands, struggled to adapt to the harsh conditions of the new territories where flora and fauna seemed alien and hostile. One particularly arduous morning, with provisions dwindling and exhaustion gripping everyone, Thora had a vision. Deep in the forest, soaring high in the sky, she saw an eagle, the very one that had guided them before. Its gaze was piercing and wise, as if beckoning her with its profound stare. Gathering renewed strength, Thora led the clan to a vast clearing where a small village, built by ancient inhabitants of these lands, once stood. The place lay in ruins, but the surrounding environment seemed blessed, as if some powerful force protected this land. In the clearing, the clan discovered a source of pure, fresh water, and game roamed abundantly in the vicinity, with deer and elk grazing in the meadows. Thora felt they were finally close to something new and promising. She convened a council of the clan's chiefs and elders. Tension still hung in the air, but the hope for a new beginning provided the strength to move forward. The decision was made unanimously. The Eagle clan would begin its new life here. For several months, the clan worked tirelessly to rebuild the village. Houses were built from logs harvested from the surrounding dense forests. Women with exceptional skill wove clothing, while warriors erected defensive walls around the new village to secure it from invasions. Children explored the valley, marveling at the abundance of life, and the elders, inspired by hope, told stories at night by the crackling campfire. The valley, surrounded by majestic mountains, served as a natural defense against invaders. A large lake situated in the center of the village provided not only water but also abundant food, fish. Hunting was successful, and the surrounding fields began to flourish. Over time, the climate, though harsh in winter, seemed milder than in their former lands, and the stability they achieved was seen as a reward for all the hardships endured. Thora, through her wise leadership, guided the clan toward a bright future. She understood that despite the end of difficult times, their new home would demand even greater effort from her people. They had lost some of their kin, but they had strengthened the bonds that tied them together. The arrival at the new settlement marked the beginning of a new era for the Eagle clan. And although skeptical voices still lingered, people gradually embraced Thora's vision, and hope for a safer, stronger, and more united future began to blossom. The spirit of the Eagle clan, marked by its connection to the gods and the ancient power of the eagle, was reborn. After long years of trials and growth, the Eagle clan finally found peace in its new home, surrounded by majestic mountains that seemed to safeguard this fearless people. The village prospered, becoming a symbol of its inhabitants' resilience and strength of spirit. Under Thora's leadership, the clan forged a new identity, a new hope, and the story of their origin and journey west transformed into a living legend, passed down by word of mouth. But as the years passed, Thora understood that her mission was far from over. She was the guardian of ancient knowledge, the bearer of wisdom passed down through generations. However, like all stories, hers too had to come to an end. Thora, now an elderly woman with silver hair blending with the mountain mist, felt it was time to preserve the last piece of her legacy. The golden feather, which had guided her during her journey and symbolized her connection to the gods and the Eagle clan. However, deciding where to hide the feather and how to ensure it would only be found by the worthy was not easy. She knew the feather possessed a power beyond human comprehension. It was a link between the clan's past and future, and its secret needed to be kept, yet also revealed when the time was right. Thora made her final decision. On a quiet morning, with mist still clinging to the hills, she ascended alone to the highest peak of the mountains surrounding the valley where the clan had settled. The cold stones and piercing winds did not deter her, and she walked with determination, clutching the golden feather in her hand. Reaching the summit, she surveyed the boundless horizon, where the land stretched to its very edge. It was a majestic panorama, worthy of the legends she herself had sung so many nights by the campfire. In that moment, the silence of the mountains seemed to envelop her soul. She reached the highest point, a summit surrounded by clouds and wind, which seemed the ideal place to conceal the feather. There, nature seemed to embody power and serenity, as if the mountains themselves honored the significance of this gesture. With a deep breath, Thora raised her feather to the heavens, performing a symbolic gesture that signified the end of one phase and the beginning of another. Then, with great care, she committed the golden feather to the frozen earth, marking the spot with an ancient stone whose purpose only one with a keen eye could decipher. The secret was securely hidden. Thora believed that the time would come when the feather would be found by a worthy skald, ready to sing the history of the Eagle clan. Having ascended the mountaintop, she entered a state of meditation, feeling the cool breath of the wind on her face. Her heart filled with a sense of completion. Her mission was fulfilled. The tales of the Eagle clan would not fall into oblivion, for she had ensured their continuity. However, before leaving this sacred place, Thora made herself another promise: to find a young skald worthy of becoming her apprentice, one to whom, in time, the secret of the feather and its purpose for future generations would be revealed. Years passed, and Thora kept her word, finding a successor in Alva, a young skald with the soul of a warrior and the wisdom of a thinker. The girl immersed herself in the study of ancient tales and the chronicles of her people. Thora passed on traditions and rituals to her, and most importantly, the responsibility for preserving the clan's historical memory. She guided her first steps on the path of a skald, teaching her not only the power of words, but also reverence, wisdom, and respect for the deeds of ancestors. During her years of apprenticeship, Alva listened intently to Thora's tales of the Eagle clan's heroic deeds and the secrets hidden in the mountains. But, like all apprentices, she was plagued by questions. One question gnawed at her. What had become of Thora's golden feather? Why had she never mentioned its location? And why did this secret seem so significant? One night, beneath a shimmering tapestry of stars, as Thora prepared for the final stage of her life's journey, she turned to Alva and, with a quiet smile, revealed the concluding part of the story. She spoke of the highest mountain peak, the place where the feather was hidden, and that it was Alva's destiny to uncover this secret when the time came. The young skald, realizing the responsibility placed upon her, vowed in her heart to follow in Thora's footsteps and ascend the mountain where the Eagle clan's future awaited its hour. She understood that she was destined to become not merely a keeper of history, but a narrator of the clan's fate. Thus ended Thora's earthly story. But her legend, the history of her people, and the secret of the golden feather continued to be passed down by word of mouth, from generation to generation. And every skald who followed in her footsteps, every future keeper of words, would bear the burden of preserving the eagle's flame and the obligation, one day at the appointed hour, to reveal the place where the golden feather awaited its discovery. Thora's legacy would not be forgotten. It lives in tales, in songs, and in generations whose path is guided by the power of the eagle. The Eagle clan, with its unyielding will and deep roots in the mountains, would live forever.